All of his stuff looked good, so probably too good because it was probably snug, but he was different in everything that he did. He locked up different. He locked up snug.
Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and you're listening to Snug Wrestling. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
And we are back again. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Snug Wrestling. It's been a while. For those of you guys that were on TikTok here recently, we just got done watching SmackDown and we're back again. This time we're recording a very special episode of Snug Wrestling Podcast with me. I am Edgar. I am your host. And today I have a very, very new guest on the show. First time ever. And I feel bad because the first thing I should have asked is I don't want to botch your last name, but Laci, how do you pronounce your last name?
Schlatz. It's a
Okay.
little bit of a mouthful.
I glad I asked because I would have completely botched it. Let me try it. Laci Schlatz.
Yes. Perfect.
Right on, Laci. Welcome to the show. Thank you for being with us today. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yes, it is. You are very lucky to be on this show. Only the best of the best get to be on this show. So, the reason that I wanted to bring you on the show is obviously to get to know you, get to know what you're all about, because I am a fan of your work. The articles that you've been putting out on your Instagram got my attention,
Thank
and I
you.
was like, wow, she has a really interesting story. And I was like, I want to get her on the show to hear about more about her work and what she does. So enough about, me trying to get you over. Tell us, get yourself over here with the people that don't know who you are. Tell us what you do and what you're all about.
Great. Thank you. Such a wonderful introduction. Goodness. Um, so I write for Last Word on Pro Wrestling, which is, I guess, also, or the pro wrestling section of Last Word on Sports, because they cover a lot of sports, but I write about the pro wrestling section. And I kind of just cover all of the current things happening in WWE and kind of more of the creative aspect, I suppose, rather than just reporting like the news that like all of the wrestling reporter websites report on. I get to like write a little more creatively and look more into the storylines, I suppose, and put my ideas out there, which I really like.
Now, is that something that you just prefer to do as opposed to like writing about, oh, so and so is headed to AEW or so and so got fired from the WWE? It's just you're just more interested in the storyline aspect of wrestling.
I definitely am. And with like the other thing with reporting news, it's like, because we do some news sections on our site, but we have to have it out obviously so fast because everyone else puts it out so fast. So just with that as well, I like to like take not my time with writing, but like I really like to like focus on everything I have, and like I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so I like to do like the creative aspect, like look at it and analyze everything. But
Yeah,
I
so
love
you
this.
really have to. I mean, I've read shit, I don't know how many of your articles. Probably like most of them, if not all of them, and they're pretty like the information on there is pretty in depth. So you go really deep into like your research and your investigation, right?
Yeah,
S- So
definitely.
so tell us a little bit about that, like about your process if you can, and just I'm just interested to know like how you put these things together.
Mhm. Well, thank you. That's a really good question as well. I so I kind of just once I think of an idea or a story, as as it is, well, I'm sure you've seen my articles are, like, broken down into sections, so I, like, piece it by that first, and then depending, I suppose, on what story I'm writing about, like, a lot of them, I might already know what I wanna put in, so then I have to, like, go back to this certain match or try to find when, um, like, right now I'm working on something about Danielson and Moxley, so now I'm, like, looking back at all those times they went against each other. So, it's just a lot of going back and finding, like, specific dates and everything and trying to make sure I'm getting the information correct and not just, like, how I might remember it,
Yeah.
because that's not always accurate.
Oh, for sure.
So, very important.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because when it comes to Moxley and Danielson, I mean, we're talking about years and years and years that, these two have history. So that
Mhm.
takes, I imagine, a shit ton of time and also a shit ton of work, if I'm not
Ye
mistaken, right?
yeah, it's definitely gonna be a little bit of a lengthier article.
Yeah. And do you like give yourself like deadlines, or is there like like for example this story, like do you have like a time frame when you're like, okay, I should have everything ready, or do you kind of just like freestyle it and you just kind of go at your own speed and just, whenever it's out, it's out.
I try to finish it within, like, the day or 2 of starting it just to get, um, I guess, just fast turnover and then more articles out, it's just better, and then as well, we have, like, a little group chat with our site, so we pitch article ideas as well, and we all can put some input in.
Mm,
But it's also, like, if you pitch an idea that might be, like, hot or current and you don't have enough time to write it, but someone else could've, then it's like
mm. Oh,
so,
okay.
yeah. So we try to
Interesting.
keep
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, you're fine. I was just saying we try to keep up with, like, as every other site does, like, the pay-per-views and, like, the current events happening, so, like, we just did a
Hmm.
handful on Bad Blood,
Hmm.
so but yeah.
Okay. um Why pro wrestling? I mean, besides pro wrestling, do you do other types of writing, or are you just strictly pro wrestling right now?
Right now, just strictly pro wrestling. I'm also a college student, so I've been writing a lot for school, and
Mm,
I write for, like, the school paper and stuff like that. But, yeah, for my own, like, independent writing, it's mostly just been pro wrestling. Um, I've been looking around just in general for more things to add to my resume, and over the summer, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I'm like, I would, in general, for everyone's like, "What do you wanna do out of college?" Whatever. I'm like, honestly, just, like, write for, like, a website or something and try to make it successful
mhm.
and turn it into something. So, I kinda just I've grown up watching pro wrestling, so I'm like, "Why not write about something I love?" And it's just easy for me. So I looked around to some sites and I found Last Word on Sports, and I really liked how they had the creative aspect.
Mhm.
Then I ended up applying and I pitched my what ended up becoming my first article, the AEW mixed tag titles possibility, and they really liked it. And here we are.
That's awesome. So this website, what is the name of the website one more time?
Um, Last Word on Sports.
Last
Or you
Word on
could
Sports. Okay.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
or you could even do Last Word on Pro Wrestling because they cover all the sports, but the little pro wrestling section is ours.
Okay. Well, for sure. You heard it. Last Word on Wrestling slash last word on sports. Um, yeah, check out Lacey's articles on there. And so besides that, like, is there any other like wrestling journalists or wrestling writers that you look up to, or you're like you get I don't know, writing styles from or anything like that? And please don't say Dave Meltzer. Or who are like some of your favorite writers?
That's a good question. Hmm. I will say, obviously, like, I've been reading a lot more of my other colleagues' articles on Last Word on Pro Wrestling. So, speaking of them, like, I love James Staines and, Ryan Page. They do great articles as well. But, Daniel Si I might butcher their last names as well. Daniel Sinek. But, they're all very, very talented, but outside of, my own website, it's I feel like I just kind of look around with, like, almost every other, like, wrestling fan. I kinda just look at what's comes up, I suppose. Um, but if we're
From
talking, like
anywhere, like from any just whatever comes out, like because I follow like a shit ton of pages and I just read everything, and that's how actually I
Mhm.
came across yours because I'm nosy like that.
Oh, thank you. But, yeah, that's what I do as well.
Mhm,
Just easier to keep, um, in touch with everything
mhm.
and everyone's opinions.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's crazy. Like how like this young, you're already like, I'm gonna get
Yeah.
into this crazy world of pro wrestling. Like this is what I want to do. That's pretty crazy. Okay. I mean, you got to be a
Thank
little
you.
crazy. You got to be a little
Yeah,
crazy to get to get into something like that. Um,
definitely.
but um, but I think you're crazy enough to do it because your articles are really interesting. One specifically, the first one I read was the Vince McMahon. He did an article about the Vince McMahon documentary.
Mhm.
And this article, you wrote it before the documentary came out.
Yes.
And you had some really good questions, interesting points on there that I did not even consider or even thought about. And it was the one that was like, I don't remember quote, verbatim word by
Mhm.
word, but it was something like, how bad is this documentary going to make Vince McMahon look? And since the documentary is going to go, it's from Netflix, Monday Night Raw is going into Netflix. Is this going to affect, Monday Night Raw going into Netflix? Is it going to turn people away? And that was something that I don't think I've heard anyone even talk about that or mention that. So now, hindsight being 2020, you saw the documentary, right? Have you
Mhm.
seen it?
Yes. Yes, I have.
What is your opinion on that after seeing it? Do you think it's going to affect the product going into Netflix now?
I think maybe to an extent. I feel like the fact that they have a few months, like, till January for, like, kind of this heat to die down definitely makes a difference, but I feel like they also didn't disclose that Vince wouldn't come back, really. Like, I feel like there's still a chance that whether it's years after this is closed, however long, I feel like there's definitely the possibility that he could come back, and if that happened, then I think that would be a whole different story, but
Mhm.
yeah, the documentary was ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, this is what pretty much I expected. Like I'm a lot, I mean, you're fairly young. I'm a lot older than you.
Yeah.
So I knew like everything, all the stories that they talked about on there. I already knew all of them pretty much. Like
Mhm.
these are all like retold stories in the documentary. So there wasn't a whole lot of new information for me watching it. I mean, I already knew Vince McMahon was a wacko, the trials, the steroid thing, the Owen Hart
Mhm.
thing, everything. It's just recycled stories, I felt like, right?
Yeah.
Um, except for like a couple things on there that we can get into in a little bit. But it did leave a lot of unanswered questions. Like you said, is he coming back or is he not? I mean, there's a possibility of that. They didn't talk about the lawsuit that's going on now a whole lot too. I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of just like mentioned it. Were you disappointed about that? Were you expecting them to like to talk about the lawsuit more? Or what were your thoughts about, the whole Janelle Grant thing and the lack of in the documentary?
Yeah, I definitely thought because I remember reading beforehand that, like, they had the documentary basically set in stone, and then this came out, and then they added, like, the 6th episode. So I kind of expected, like, more of the entirety, at least, of that episode to be about the lawsuit and everything, but it was only, like, the ending really of the episode. It
Mhm.
wasn't much, it was kind of already everything that was shown to the public, and then a few reporters' insights.
Yeah.
So,
Was there anything else like in that documentary that you would have been like, "Man, like I would have done this different." I would have asked these questions like if you were sitting in front of Vince McMahon, like what would you ask him? Because like I said, like everything on there, it was already like unless you're really young, you don't really know or you don't research, the history. We already knew all of this stuff, so I thought we were gonna learned all of these things that we never learned about Vince McMahon, and we just did not. I didn't feel like we
mm,
we we didn't learn anything new. So is there anything different that you would have done in that situation?
that's a good question. I feel like probably, but Vince McMahon's also clearly in the documentary as it was shown, like, he's hard to, like, get good answers, I feel like, out of, but I'd say if they pried a little more, but then I know his aggressive attitude probably wouldn't like that either. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm trying to think of any specific questions. If anything, just more about the current lawsuits.
The
Well, if
lot.
anything, they didn't even get to that because he wouldn't answer anything about that
Right,
as he
right.
shouldn't.
Did you do it, Vince? Did you
Yeah,
really
right.
do it? Is it
But
true?
or I guess maybe more of the past allegations, 'cause um, the past allegations of his what was it, a rape of one of the what was it, Ashley? The
Mazzaro? Was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Maybe if they acknowledge and she was just done wrong in that case, it seemed like. Maybe if they I don't know. I don't know the whole story and everything. I
You
just
you don't know the whole story about something? Wow, I find that hard to believe. I find that hard to believe. No,
But,
I'm kidding.
yeah, from the documentary, it seemed that one definitely seemed interesting, and I found the ring boy allegations that one very
So
interesting
was that
as
a first
well.
for you? Did you ever hear like or were any of the stories that were told in the documentary were they like a first for you or you were like, "Oh wow, I did not know that." Or did you already know all these things too?
It was those 2. It
Mhm.
was and that was really it, because I knew, like, the steroids and all the Hulk Hogan stuff,
Mhm.
drama, but, yeah, it was mostly those 2, and I feel like granted, I know those were obviously publicized and in newspapers and obviously out there,
Mhm.
but not to the extent of the other ones.
Mhm.
But granted, it's coming from a younger person's view who wasn't there at that time or wasn't watching at that time, so
Yeah,
I
so a
can't
lot of it
make
was
as much of
brand new
that, but
a lot of it was like new to you then, like
yeah.
it was like, "Oh, this is brand new information." No, I always knew Vince McMahon was a freaking maniac, and
Yeah.
I will say one thing about the documentary is that it kind of gave you a different perspective as to like we kind of always knew Vince McMahon was crazy, but I still always had that doubt a little bit. Like all the storylines that he did back in the Attitude Era, one could say, "Oh well, he's just acting. He's just playing a character. It's not real." You know, but then now the way that they presented the documentary, it was like, no, he was not just playing a character. It seemed like this is really who he is. And even though as much as Vince McMahon was saying, like, oh yeah, Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon, they're two totally different people. Yeah, I don't think that's true at all anymore. After after seeing that that was one of my um major major takeaways from the documentary. And I hate to say it, but I don't think we're ever gonna find out who the real Vince McMahon is, because last time I checked, or last time I read multiple articles, it was that Vince McMahon, he's health wise not doing so good anymore. I mean, he's like, I don't know, he's like in his mid 70s probably.
I think
So
so.
yeah, which sucks, man. I thought
Yeah.
this one was gonna be the one um where we got all of our answers, all of our questions answered, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I just wanted to get your opinion about the documentary after, you wrote the article before the documentary and your thoughts after. But before we move on, I wanted to ask you about another piece that you wrote. But before we move on to that, any closing thoughts, any final words that you want to add about the Vince McMahon documentary? You know, now that you've completely watched it.
Hmm. Um, I just think it was overall I guess it was very good to get that out there, even though, like, a lot of it was stuff that was already released. I feel like for whether it be people my age or younger and looking to learn history of the wrestling industry, I feel like that's a good documentary, even though it's not necessarily the best representation. It is the history of it, and it is how it came to be. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Were
maybe
you
there will be another
disappointed?
one.
Were you disappointed in it?
I I definitely was. I wish there were some more answers, whether it be from Vince about the previous stuff or about from colleagues.
Mhm.
'Cause how I thought it was interesting how they had, like, The Rock and Cody Rhodes
Mhm.
but and even Paul Heyman, but yeah, and then after the allegations, not one of them. I think maybe Cody Rhodes spoke after, but that was
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. I think my favorite quote from the entire documentary was by Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman summed up Vince McMahon like in like to the T. He said something like, the people that think um that Vince McMahon owns the WWE are wrong. It's the WWE that owns Vince McMahon. And I was like, "Oh shit. That pretty much sums it all up." I mean, i- his he has a family. He had a wife. I don't think they're still together. His kids, like the WWE is Vince McMahon's baby. That's
Mhm.
the only thing that he really cares about. Um
That's oh,
mhm,
sorry. That's definitely what stood out to me between them going through the past storylines as well, like,
mhm,
and just actually just pulling up all of these, like you said, absurd ideas that he had, and yeah, it's just a character, but at the same time, you are still going back home to this family, and it's like,
mhm,
I can see the awkwardness in that,
mhm.
to say the least.
Yeah, Tony Atlas was also one of my favorite ones. Do you remember Tony Atlas in that documentary?
Mhm. Mhm.
The Ring Boy scandal. It was a story that was told, many many times over the years, and all those times that the WWE told that ring scandal story in different documentaries or um every chance they got, they would really defend Pat Patterson. Um I'm not sure if you remember who Pat Patterson was, but
Yeah.
he was one of the ones that was accused in that ring scandal
Mhm.
thing. And over the years, they would protect Pat Patterson to the point where I was like, you know what, Pat Patterson, they're just coming after him because he's gay. Okay, he wouldn't
Mhm.
do anything like that. Pat Patterson, he's a good guy. And then after hearing Tony Atlas about talking about
Yep.
Pat Patterson going around the locker room and doing all these things, I was like, oh man, that's it's kind of shady because like it's kind of like the WWE. I feel like WWE is kind of like brainwashing people into thinking, oh, Pat Patterson, he's this all right guy, but he already passed away. But I don't know about that anymore either. But yeah, other than that, those were the two like things that really stood out to me about that documentary.
Mhm.
I was also really disappointed in the documentary. I was expecting a lot more. Um, I'm not surprised by it. And again, just going back to the question that you had in your article, is it going to affect Monday Night Raw? If anything, do you think it would actually get them more viewers?
Yeah, possibly, because there is, like is how bad can bad publicity be? You know?
Hmm.
If Vince was still there, then yeah, that would be an issue, but he's gone, and now people are stirring about the WWE because it's on Netflix, and then they're gonna have the whole little feature on their homepage featuring Raw and any other shows that they put on there.
Mm, yeah,
So,
that's true. Very, very true. Well, moving on real quick before we get out of here, Lacey, I want to ask you about one more thing, and that is you put out an article about the mid card championship for the women's division, adding another title to the WWE. And again, another
mhm,
great article, interesting. You had a lot of great points in there.
thank you.
Uh, yeah, so tell us about what made you want to write about this or talk about this, and yeah, when do you think they're gonna pull the plug on this? Because it seems like it's coming. Seems like it's
Mhm,
coming. Um, So yeah, tell us a little bit about, the backstory behind that article that you did recently.
thank you. Hopefully it's coming soon, but yeah, I just feel like WWE needs another singles women's championship between because I'm pretty sure didn't they just retire the NXT Women's Championships? I could be wrong, but,
The tag team titles?
yeah, the tag team, sorry.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
did like this they combined them with the women's tag team
yeah.
championships or
So,
something
like,
like that. Mhm.
that alone that makes sense 'cause it's a tag team roster, but then taking away another title opens more opportunities, I suppose.
Mm,
But with like, AEW has the TBS Women's Championship. I feel
mhm,
like if they had another championship, they could fulfill just it could fulfill the spaces that I feel like fans wanna see their favorite wrestlers have. Like, there are great wrestlers like Chelsea Green, Mi Chin, who just had the garbage match tonight, and, um
quite literally, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
And even like Piper Niven, and there's all this talent in NXT that I feel like could come up in that having a new like in the middle title like before
mhm,
reaching the women's championship would be a great almost stepping stone to see how they can hold a championship on, like, the main roster and how the fans react to them. And I think it would be interesting if it was just as simple as, like, a United States women's title or an Intercontinental women's title, or even if they intertwined the North American NXT Women's Championship into the main roster somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would just be great opportunity for the women, and then for the fans too, they get to see some more of their favorite wrestlers who aren't in the world title picture become a champion and have their own spotlight.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here. Extreme and awesome. I just saw. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the comments, but I'm gonna let you answer this one, Laci. If Raquel Rodriguez joined the LWO, do you think she could be the muscle of the group and the advisor that keeps the group together? So how about that? How would you feel about Raquel Rodriguez joining the LWO?
I think that'd be really interesting.
Mhm,
She's a phenomenal wrestler, and just look at her physique,
mhm,
and I feel like she brings something completely different to them. Between she's more, like, brutal, I suppose, because she is a bigger woman and less,
mhm,
like, high flying, but, yeah, she would bring something, I think, completely new to the group, and it would be something cool to see.
mhm. Speaking about going back to the women's championships in the WWE, how do you feel about what they've been doing with Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair? Because to me, it seems like the women's tag team division, not just the women's tag team division, also sometimes I feel like the men's tag team division can use a lot of help. But right now we got Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, dominant tag team. But what? How are you feeling them as being champions right now?
I liked them as champions at first when it was, like, something new and fresh and just unique, and it's exciting to see them, but a lot of the times I feel like, especially when being a face tag team, it can be hard to not bring something new, but bring something new. It feels like a lot of it can be, like, repetitive that we see, which is why it's been kind of boring. I feel like a lot of us are kind of waiting for when we're gonna see Belair versus Cargill at this point instead of, um
Everyone's waiting for that. They're just waiting for
yeah,
that turn. Yeah.
it's gonna be a great match too whenever it happens, but everyone's just waiting for that rather than focusing on them as a team. I feel like for the tag team roster to, like, for both men and women, there just needs to be more, like, legitimate tag teams that you think will actually stay together. Like, the New Day was a good one, and the Street Profits are a great one. Um, and
Yeah,
even
they don't
when
always have to break up.
I
A and
know.
just and just because of that and just because of that, just because people wanna see Bianca versus Jade Cargill, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I really I like I said, you had really good points on the article that you did about the women's tag team, but I'm gonna have to play devil's advocate, Lacey, and say they need to focus on the women's tag team divisions first.
Ag
Um,
agreed.
but you bring up some really good points.
Thank you.
I'll give you that.
Thank
Um,
you.
well, yeah, right on, Lacey. Besides your article that's coming out about Danielson and John Moxley, give us the scoop. Is there anything else that you are working on right now that we should be looking forward to, or is it just AEW stuff right now with Moxley and Danielson?
Right now, I just have AEW stuff with Moxley and Danielson, but in the distant future, not too near, but I would ideally like to look to do some indie wrestler interviews of some local people around here.
Wow,
But
that's right. You also had another article that was like about Top, what was it? Was it 50 or 500? I can't remember.
It was the PWI 500 list, and I did some of the top indie wrestlers from there.
Ah, there you go.
So,
There you
yeah.
go. See, that's and that's interesting because that's stuff that not a lot of people are reporting on, like,
Mhm.
I'm not big on the indies at all, never have been. I've always been WWE, now AEW, so it's like, I learned about a lot of names that I never learned before, so that's where it's at.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but yeah, definitely everyone check out Laci's work, man. She's writing some good stuff. She's doing some cool stuff over there, talking about pro wrestling, writing about pro wrestling. Um, check out her stuff. It's good work, and I'm a fan now. I'm gonna keep reading, keep following
Thank
you.
you.
Um, but before we go, tell them where they can find you, where they can find your work, and where they can hit you up at.
Great, thank you. So you can find me on, or I guess you can start by finding my work on Last Word on Pro Sport or Last Word on Pro Wrestling. And you can find me on Instagram where I also have my work, which is Laci Schlatz, LaciSchlatz. And that is also my handle for Twitter. So that's where you can find me and all my work.
There you go, guys. Give her a look. Give her a follow. She does real work, not that Uncle Dave stuff that melts her stuff. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Need that.
Right on. Thanks again, Laci, for coming on to the show. And well, don't be a stranger. Down the line, I want to hear about your journey and doing your interviews with the indie wrestlers and all that good stuff. So, good luck to you. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right on. My name is Edgar. I'm the host of Snug Wrestling. Thank you guys, everyone that's watching and that were on the comments, liking, following, and all that good stuff. We will talk soon. Later.